Hello, welcome back to Judaism Part 4. This is when I'll go over the 9 parts of Judaism, which you will find in your book, Smith. So make sure that you read that. I'm just going to go over the 9 parts from the PowerPoint. Okay, so let's get right to it. Okay, so make sure that you do know to read the Smith book before you go over this PowerPoint or even before you watch this video. So here's a few points about Judaism that you have to understand before you start going into the 9 parts of Judaism. First of all, like I said earlier, it's a religion rooted in history, meaning everything is real. There's no samsara or artificial reality or any of that stuff. And we are absolutely in relationship with this God because we are in covenant or contract with this God. So different parts of history can be interpreted as either breaking the covenant, of course it's our fault, or fulfilling the covenant. Okay? Is there Messiah? As I had said in Judaism Part 3, both Jews and Christians believe in a Messiah figure, but Christians have believe that the Messiah has come and went, which is Jesus, while the Jews are still waiting for their Messiah. So in terms of what happens after we die, for Jews, if the Messiah hasn't come yet in order to give us the information on how to live in the Messianic age, for Jews, they're kind of in the clear because it's a long time coming. For Christians, our Messiah came, gave us the information we needed to live our lives, and then left. So the very next thing that we have to look forward to is Judgment Day, where we will be evaluated against the things that Jesus had told us to do. So for Christians, the idea of death or facing, kind of Judgment Day is a little bit more scary than it is for Jews. So we're both on the same timeline. Both Jews and Christians are on the same timeline. It just so happens that Christians are on the other side of the timeline where the Messiah came and went. Okay? All right, so let's go over those 5 parts. First thing is that Judaism is monotheistic, truly monotheistic, as in there is only one God, and they're all good and evil come from that one God. So even in the Bible, when Satan makes an appearance, Satan was actually sent by God to question someone in the book of Job. So there is no, God versus Satan. It's just God. And Satan sometimes can be literally the devil's advocate, can be sent by God in order to question people. So that means, something like the exile, that's came from God. The Holocaust, which is just the most awful thing to happen to Jews because 6 million died, that also is the responsibility of God. So it's a very difficult idea, the idea that all good and evil, everything comes from this one God. It makes it more challenging to worship this God, but in the same way, it puts a lot of respect on you, the believer, that you are capable of recognizing this contradiction, within your Godhead. This God can also be seen as very human. That's why we can have a relationship with this God, which is symbolized by the covenant or contract. Once again, really know what the covenant is. If we obey God's commandments, we will get the promised land, many descendants, and that God will be your God forever. And so far, the promised land, we have that, right? Many descendants, there are many millions of Jews all around the world. And is God your God? I would say so. So we're probably in covenant with God right now. The third part is that this God is a God of history, meaning every historical act is significant. It's not just random or, because of karma. Everything is important because it is either fulfilling our relationship with God or breaking the covenant. So I'm not saying, oh no, I lost my car keys and I found it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm meaning every significant thing like the Exodus, the monarchy, the Holocaust, the exile, the destruction of the Second Temple, all of these kind of cataclysmic important events in Judaic history is seen in light of either fulfilling or breaking the covenant. On the test, I may ask you to give some examples, and some of the ones I just cited would be good examples. Number 4, this religion is a very legalistic religion, meaning law-based, right? So at the core are the 10 Commandments, and here's a picture of the 2 tablets with the 10 Commandments, which is allegedly believed to be housed in the Ark of the Covenant, that box that I had shown you in I think number 2, part 2. So this is a very legalistic religion where there's a number of law codes or laws that you have to follow in order to maintain this relationship with God. So it's a very kind of conditional if-then religion. The 5th thing is throughout the ages, Jews have been persecuted and were kind of forced by social interaction and cultural interaction to kind of stick together. And so now, today, much like the Reconstructionist Jews, many Jews feel like being Jewish is more than just a chosen religious identity, but actually an ethnic identity. So people actually believe that you don't even have to believe in God and still be Jewish because it is part of who you are. I think the closest thing to that is probably how Catholics feel. Some Catholics were raised in the Catholic tradition, and maybe they don't go to church anymore. They don't even bring their own family or kids to church. But whenever you ask them, hey, what religion are you? They'll say Catholic, like it's part of who they are. That's kind of similar to what the community meaning like an ethnic affiliation versus a religious one. And I don't think there's any other religion that actually is similar to this extent to Judaism. Number 6 would be Judaism's holidays or ceremonies. Now keep in mind, many, many, many rituals and sacrifices and ceremonies were done away with when they decided to shift from the Second Temple to the text. So when the temple no longer became centralized, many of the rituals also did not either. But there are still some holidays and rituals that remain. So I'm going to actually... And this is the little calendar of holidays that the Jewish calendar is actually different from the Roman calendar or the Christian calendar. We are currently in 2021, CE, the Common Era. But the Jewish calendar goes according to the agrarian cycle. So they go from fall to fall, and they would have a different number, much like Muslims have a different calendar as well. So their religious calendar goes from fall to fall. So many of the holidays either are in September, October, or in the spring. Okay, so I'll just let you take a look at all these different holidays. There's Shabbat, there's Rosh Hashanah, which of course would fall in September and October because it's their Jewish New Year. Yom Kippur, which is also known as the Day of Atonement. Sukkot, Simchat Torah, Hanukkah, Purim, Passover, and Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is unusual because it's the only one that's in the middle of the summer, but the rest of them all seem to fall in either the fall and the spring. And Passover would be the most important one. That is like, for Christians, Easter, which is our most important holiday. Passover is the most important holiday for Jews. All right? So make sure you take a look at what all those holidays are. In terms of dietary laws, these are called kosher laws. The word kosher actually means fit. So when something is kashrut in Hebrew, it means it's fit to be consumed. It is like proper, okay? So a variety of laws, kosher laws, dietary laws, actually have their roots in biblical texts. And some of them, we actually don't know why this would be, but that's just how they are. So certain things that have biblical roots would be specific species of animals that are permitted for consumption, while others are forbidden. So pork and shellfish are forbidden. Meat and milk are never to be combined, like you can't have a cheeseburger or even a steak with a glass of milk. You can't combine them at the same meal. Certain animals have to be slaughtered a particular way. That would be known as shechita, or in a painless manner. The hip bone of an animal must also be discarded, and also the blood. So In Judaism, you'd never have a rare steak because the blood has to be bled dry. Fruits, vegetables, and grains are always kosher. Must be insect-free because that would be an animal with an exoskeleton, which is forbidden. Wine or grape juice have to be certified kosher in terms of processing. Where was it made? And you can't have pork, shellfish, bottom dwellers. Anything that feeds off the bottom of a body of water, like flounder or catfish, or anything just kind of feeds off the stuff, the kind of the dirt and stuff that falls to the bottom. Carrion eaters, anything that scavenges off of other dead animals and things. So anything like an owl or an osprey or a hawk or a kite or a lion or a tiger or a hyena, you can't eat those things, though frankly, would you eat them? But they're kind of laid out in the biblical text as, you can't do it. So there's a variety of kosher laws. I'm going to ask, what are the 9 parts of Judaism, and can you give me some examples of kosher laws and also laws in terms of the 10 Commandments and things like that. So make sure that you have that either from the Smith book or from the Novak book. Okay? And the 8th part is the texts. These are central to Rabbinic Judaism, even from the turn of the millennium. So there are the most important texts, the Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Bible. That's made up of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Nebi'im, which actually translates to prophets, but contains all the historical books and the prophetic writings. And then the Ketubim is like the miscellaneous category, where that's everything else in the Hebrew Bible. So that's the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament. The second most important book would be the Talmud, which has 2 components to it, the Mishnah and the Gemara. This is a commentary on both the Tanakh, or the Torah, specifically the Torah, and the Gemara is a commentary on the Mishnah. So it's like basically a commentary on a commentary, and thoughts and ideas and expansions of various things that you might find in the Hebrew Bible. So the Talmud is important because it was kind of like a referendum or something that you could look at and consult in order to explain things in the Bible. And then the Targum is the Aramaic version of the Tanakh. So the Tanakh was written in classical Hebrew, which was not a spoken language at the time. And I know how to read classical Hebrew. It's not difficult, but it definitely was not spoken. It was like the Latin of that time. So Aramaic was the spoken language of that time, and the Targum was the translation. So it would be as if back in the day, when the Bible used to be written in Latin, and then King James came along and translated into the English, which was the spoken vernacular of that time, it would be the same thing. So classical Hebrew was like Latin, Aramaic was like English. So when they translated it and into the Targum, it basically made it much more accessible to everyone around them. Now, I had mentioned that Hebrew was a dead language and only read. That is true, which leads us to the 9th one. Hebrew was a dead language, meaning no one actually spoke it, but they only read it as a classical language. It's actually very early on. It dates from the Paleo-Hebrew from 3,000 years ago all the way up until, classical Hebrew of the text that we have now. In the 19th century, they attempted to integrate Hebrew into the spoken language, and that's where they got Yiddish, which was a mixture of Hebrew and German. And then a couple of years later, they decided to vocalize and make Hebrew into a living language, and that's why Hebrew really is only about 200 years old, the actual living language of Hebrew, not the classical one, which has been around for thousands of years, but the living language of Hebrew that they currently speak in Israel is relatively new. It used to be a dead language, and now it's living. Okay, so those are the 9 parts of Judaism. This is the last of that. The next video will be on Christianity, and I think that probably will be split up into 3 parts. All right, good luck on the test. Just make sure to be as thorough as you can in terms of examples and explaining anything that you might not know. All right, so I'll see you for Christianity.